What is education, and why is education important? Is it important? After all, what's the real purpose of getting educated about anything? We so frequently take education and the process for learning in general totally for granted. Not only that, but the ways in which we think. How we've gone about structuring our own consciousness itself has largely remained unchanged for a long, long time. So how do we literally change our minds? Can we reconfigure our own ways of thinking? And if so, how? Join Dr. Joseph Atman, the founder of one of the world's most revolutionary educational centers, Middletree, and award-winning broadcaster Tammy Trujillo for Educate Everyone and explore the mysteries of our own consciousness and the education we implement in order for it to be what it is.
And on this episode of Educate Everyone, it's part 2 of our conversation with Jason Tavarez. He is the Director of Institutional Resilience at Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California. He oversees risk management and emergency preparedness at the school. He also serves as Secretary of the Board of Middletree, supporting educational equity and access through community-focused programs.
Santa Barbara is a beach town with some colleges in it. All right. And obviously, Isla Vista, that's where UC Santa Barbara is. And that's the big school that tens of thousands of students. And it does feel like a lot of students when you're over there. But it's also not directly in Santa Barbara. It's again, Isla Vista, which is over by Goleta, which is the next town over. And it's right on the water, which is awesome. So if you ever go to Goleta State Beach, you can see the buildings on top of the water, basically, for UCSB. And they do have a large footprint there. And they do hit State Street up and everything like that. But the town itself is such a tourist beach town that's what it feels like. Westmont itself, where I work, that's up in Montecito. So we're, as the crow flies, maybe 2.5 miles away from Oprah, a bunch of famous actors. There's probably the most billionaires per capita outside of Silicon Valley that live within 5-mile radius of the campus. But it's very isolated. And our students, the freshmen and sophomores, don't even have cars on campus at all because we don't have the space and we don't want them to leave as much. We want them to be part of the community. And then unless you know Westmont is here, you have no idea that there's a 100-acre campus in the middle of this like luxury playground for really, really wealthy people. I like it most of the time because it makes those colleges and universities feel very, very separate from Santa Barbara itself. Sometimes it's nice to see the students really getting involved in Santa Barbara proper, and they have internships and things like that to do that. But there is Santa Barbara, there's UCSB, and there's Westmont. They're all very unique entities in their own right. I didn't even mention City College is awesome. Right. People talk about the UCSB campus, but City College is literally like right there on the water as well. It's across the road from the water, and that's awesome. And honestly, they've done a lot of really great things. As many of you know, like just community colleges in California are becoming so affordable, and a really smart way to really heed the mantra of educate everybody, because so many of them are basically free tuition for their students now, right? And so the access point is really great. What's interesting, though, with all that free tuition, we're seeing actually a decline in enrollments at the City College. And there's probably a litany of reasons for that. One of them is obviously the enrollment cliff that's coming in 2026. If you look at the demographic data of the United States, basically now for the next several years, probably for a long time, there's just going to be fewer students that are applying to colleges just because our population has not grown the way that we thought it would. And there's not the same amount of basically 18 to 22-year-olds that we would have expected, 20 years ago. Additionally, Santa Barbara is expensive, as I'm sure you know, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners know here. It is redonkulously expensive. Price of a house out here, you're looking at $1,200 a square foot, probably more depending on where you're living. That's just not tenable. So a lot of students are just moving out. I have a neighbor across the street who had a son that was going to SBCC. He lives in Arizona now because he was like, I'm never going to be able to afford a place here. And he wasn't the most studious of students, so he was going in a different path. Ironically enough, we're seeing a lot more homeowners that are what we would consider tradespeople. So people that, your electricians, your plumbers, your air conditioner guys and gals, and construction foremen and things like that. Those are the people that are able to really build up the wealth, because we're seeing more and more that just a college education does not guarantee a certain income, right, or lifestyle now, because we've commodified it too much. And so Santa Barbara is a very interesting place, is what I can say.
Yeah, because the reason I was thinking about and asking, well, not only obviously you live there and are involved so heavily in Westmont, but it does have a number of colleges. And when I'm in Santa Barbara, I also don't get the feeling that, gosh, it's such a college town per se. I definitely more of a beach feel. quintessential California. You and I are both not from California. And so we have kind of like ideas about what California is and whatnot. But to me, Santa Barbara, like, kind of exemplifies what California is supposed to be all about.
Santa Barbara is the most California place I've ever lived. I'll put it that way. And it's got the palm trees. It's got the beaches. I mean, the cruise ship stops in the channel whenever the cruises are coming through because it's a tourist place. It's an awesome place. If you get a chance to visit Santa Barbara, folks, like, do it. It's beautiful. It's awesome. The weather, we get 300 plus days of sunshine every year. And even on the days when we have clouds, it clears up by the end of the day normally. I love it here.
I haven't lived at home since I was 18 for any more than a few months here and there. I think you kind of have a similar thing. I have a very close relationship with my family. And so every opportunity I get to go home, I do. And again, this just kind of goes back to what Claremont has given to us is getting out beyond that place you're from. Certainly has some advantages to it, making your own way, in the world as well. But
it's funny you say that because, like, I was in my heart a California boy always. Like, I was a little wannabe punk rocker. I wanted to live in San Diego and follow Blink-182 and all that kind of stuff, right? Yep. So I feel like this is actually more home than where I'm from. I'm from Texas, Northwest Houston, as you know, and I like visiting, but then I'm always very happy to go back, and I like a lot when my parents come out to visit. I have to convince my mom that it's worth it to live out here because, my parents' house is a quarter of the price and 4 times larger than my house.
Right.
But then I have to live in Northwest Houston, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with the heat and the humidity. It kills me now.
Yeah.
And so it's a good excuse for them to come out here. And obviously I have the 3 kids in Volney to take back, so it gets pretty expensive now to fly. And if you're going to drive, it's 2-3 days. It's not an easy drive. So I feel like I am meant to be out here. I'm meant to be close to the water. And especially the Pacific Ocean. It's my happy place.
It's the sunshine tax, right? I mean, there's
absolutely
a hefty price to pay to live in paradise. Again, it does attract an interesting array of folks. So, as we've been talking about. But we should probably talk about Middle Tree.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think what we're doing is really important. What we've evolved into has changed quite a lot from what we set out to do. And yet,
to say the least.
And what we mean by that is, like, we've changed from going and servicing students exclusively who came to us directly. Mm-hmm. The mission was always to make sure that anyone who wanted the services that we were offering could afford it, regardless of their financial capacity. That was always the mission. And that still is at the heart of the mission.
Remember where I came from, right? The private tutoring industry at a private center and just seeing the exorbitant prices. And, like, again, those people could afford it. And I guess some of them couldn't, but they figured out how to pay for it because it was so important to them. But the whole goal, the reason I was so willing to get involved with Middle Tree back in the day and still stay with it to this day is because the idea is to provide access to those that need and want it, regardless of income or cost. And the whole premise behind Middle Tree was making sure that if you needed additional help or you were excelling or you wanted to take advantage of this or that or whatever, Middle Tree would be there. And I love the model that you came up with, Joe. I love that we had scholarship opportunities. I love that we were trying to make it as affordable and accessible as possible. And it's amazing how it has pivoted from, we still offer those services and we still have seed or in the summer programs and things like that, to much more of a partnership type model with the school districts where you're offering a lot of the same things, but now getting to reach so many more people. And what's really cool, I think, is that the direct cost for the services now is really being borne by school districts and other folks and not necessarily directly by the families and the students of those families, which I think is really important and creates a better access point for those that either want or need it.
Yep, it totally does. You said it all, right? Like, we've evolved to being an organization that was reliant solely on its members, and then those members supplemented other members. And yeah, our services are greatly discounted. Even now with our school district partners, we know for a fact that we are on almost every opportunity. We are always going to be on the more affordable side of things, and that aligns exactly with our mission to provide the highest caliber of services while doing it at the lowest cost possible. But that mission, and I appreciate you saying about the way that I've set this up, and it wasn't all, as you know, Jay, through the stroke of genius as an idea at the onset of Middle Tree. It evolved into it. It evolved pretty quick, but it still had to evolve into hey, we need to personalize everyone's education. Hey, we need to give people whatever time that they need in order to do the work that they need to do, because that's a huge problem within the education system is we're moving on. We only have so much time.
Here's what's crazy about that. I couldn't agree with you more, but also the students that are succeeding and really excelling, we don't provide the resources for those students either.
Right. That's true.
Because we strike so much for the middle to bring up the bottom, to bring down the top, we actually end up hurting all students because, like you say, it's not physically possible to personalize education for every single student in a traditional education setting, right? You can't do it. If you got 20 to 30 students in a class, you cannot mix and match everything so much that everyone's getting exactly what they need. And that's why a middle tree is so critically important. If you have a student that is struggling with a subject and is going to get left behind, middle tree is there to help lift them up and hopefully figure out what the issue is and get them the services, be it a more personalized attention or understanding they have dyslexia or understanding that they just need more help, right? Conversely, if you got a student that's really excelling, for a relatively minimal cost, you can bring them into middle tree and be like, oh my gosh, you're in 8th grade, you want to do calculus? We've got a calculus tutor right here.
Yep.
Let's go figure out how to maximize your potential, and then you can start testing out of things or doing whatever it is you want to do. I think that's the thing that with supplemental educational services, my oldest son is in Montessori school within the public school. So at his school, there is a Montessori program for basically 20 to 30 students from 1st through 3rd grade, and then another 20 to 30 students in 4th through 6th grade. And the Montessori school is great because it allows them to focus on the things they need to focus on and then gives them opportunity to focus on the things that they want to focus on, right? With that being said, it's hard to get all of the things done that you need to get done to continue matriculating through your educational experience. And that's where, again, a program like Middle Tree, or Middle Tree specifically, fills those gaps. And so I'm very grateful for our reassessment of our abilities and our ability to pivot and expand. And interestingly enough, Joe, in so many ways, COVID was so detrimental to education, right, across the board. Because if we knew what we knew now at the beginning of COVID, we probably would have done a lot of things differently for students in K through 12 in particular. But that also gave us an opportunity to expand those partnerships. And you call it not genius, you call it like survival. But dadgum Joe, I would have thought of that. That wasn't my kind of vision because I was so pigeonholed into thinking of the individual memberships that you took a very big risk and put a lot of resources, effort, and energy. And that's what has made us as successful as we are, the partnerships. So don't knock yourself short for that because that was pretty doggone ingenious.
I appreciate that. The advantage that I have over a lot of folks in being a CEO is I have no idea how to be a CEO. And I have no idea really
for better or for worse sometimes,
for
right?
better or for worse. And trust me, that ugly head rears itself on the for worse, end of the spectrum relatively frequently. But I do understand that, or maybe I don't, that I just don't know that you shouldn't do certain things in a certain way, or that you need to fill in the blank. I'm always terrible with specific examples.
The idea of reading a balance sheet when you first started was an impossibility, right? You didn't know financials, you didn't know all that kind of stuff. You have greatly improved it. I would say your biggest issue as a CEO was you cared too darn much. That's your biggest issue. But also you had the skin in the game, so it's also your greatest strength. But I still remember you ever heard something negative from somebody or you got a negative review, having to talk you off the ledge of writing those 20-page emails explaining our rationale. And I say that to hopefully make you laugh and not get you mad, but more importantly to show how much you cared, because that's what drove us. I think the hardest thing for people to learn in a leadership capacity is that it's rarely personal. But I'm glad it was personal for you because that means you gave a you-know-what about it. You really cared and you wanted it to succeed. And it also means that there's a lot of stress with that. But you also have to take your flowers when we give them to you because you've done a good job. I got to say, you've made it an institution in Claremont, and to the point where we've got multiple school district partnerships, we've got multiple centers, and we've got a bunch of people that are employed directly because of your vision.
Well, so it sounds to me like you're not going to fire me at the next board meeting.
I couldn't even fathom doing anything like that.
I appreciate those flowers, and I appreciate those really kind words, Jay. And you have been, if I could pass some back to you, so integral and instrumental in what we've done, not just as a board member, but as somebody who And I would give this advice to folks who are looking to start their own organization. Get people involved in it who are passionate, like Jason is, but who you really, really trust. And it's kind of the great thing about you is you're one of my best friends. You have all this expertise in education. You're really intelligent within your field and just in general as a human being. You're passionate about what we're doing. So you were are and have been like the perfect board member. And Eric and Benny and Trish, and you can say all the same things. And now we've brought in Buddy as our president and COO. But again, all of these people sort of share that passion and bring some of their own flair and expertise to things. So you're trying to create a diverse organization, a board. And I think that's been a strength that we've been able to capitalize on at Middle Tree. And yeah, we just keep plodding on, and we don't know what's next for us. And we're certainly facing new and different challenges here today because of the growth that we've endured. But I'm really grateful that we are where we are. And it's in large part of the support that we have from not only our constituencies, but our board. And so, again, I just thank you for being such a support to me, to Middle Tree, and I should say to me professionally and personally for these many years, my dude. So thank you, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
And now the Middle Tree Minute.
This is Kristen Hernandez, Middle Tree's executive assistant. If your child feels overwhelmed by a big assignment, teach them to chunk it. That means breaking it into small, doable pieces. For example, step 1, pick a topic. Step 2, find 2 sources. Step 3, write a rough outline. Suddenly, it's not one big scary mountain. It's just a few hills. Small wins build momentum, and momentum builds confidence. That's the secret sauce. And that's the Middle Tree Minute.
And now a quick look into Dr. Atman's book, A Philosophical War. Joe, there's this idea that you present within the book that talks about the relationship between speech and thought. So, okay, can you tell us more about that? Because it's really an important distinction to make when we talk about consciousness overall.
It comes down to this very simple idea that how we speak about things is how we think about them. And again, the project of the book is to look at how we as human beings are conscious. Not that we are conscious. Of course, we all kind of understand that, yes, we're conscious. That is almost taken for granted. But that's precisely the point, is that it is taken for granted, and that the way in which we become conscious has largely been crafted by a lot of decisions that we've made as human beings. And one of the ways that we've gone about unconsciously or unawarely making these decisions is through our patterns of speech. And if you think about it, what's really the distinction between speech and thought? The way that we've come to construct speech and thought within, again, our brand of being conscious as human beings, there's very little distinction of it frequently. You can think about a brown cow, and there are not necessarily words that are attached to that. But when you start to really kind of get into it, you think about its characteristics and how those characteristics relate to other things within the world, and how you define and interpret those things. And we come to see pretty quickly that we start to talk about things in such a way that give us a definition. And again, we've also talked in this podcast, in this segment, about, as asides, that we have to be careful about ever arriving at concrete conclusions and definitions. And the reason that I've kind of hinted at that is because once you're locked into a definition, you're polarizing your experience. That is, you say that a thing is this way, and because it is this way, it cannot be that way. And then so because you have that definition, you might miss something about that thing because of your definition. I have a definition that, Tammy, you're just a broadcaster, and that's what you are. That's my understanding of you. But yet, if I was just locked into that, I wouldn't understand that you've also been a musician, that you are a wife and do all this wonderful work with animals. What we focus on, how we make our definitions, how we talk about things, becomes how we think about them. If you're a person who is always talking about things as if they are a difficulty, then you are going to instantly be experiencing things from that deficit, from, gosh, I've got to go to work today, rather than saying, I get to go to work today. Saying, gosh, it's really hot outside today. Well, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's a bit warm, but that's okay, right? We're fortunate to live in this warm, sunny, beautiful place. So our definitions become our experience. And that can be within ourselves. It can be within the world that we experience. But it's really, really important that we watch our definitions, because those definitions that we have about ourselves and about the world become our experience. The Buddha is famously quoted as saying, you become what you think about. And I would add to that, you are what you speak about. And so if you speak about something in a certain way, even, if you fake it till you make it, you will have the interpretation of that, because your thoughts and your experiences, there's very little differentiation between how you think and how you experience something. We also talked in this segment about how two people can observe a similar event and have totally different interpretations of that thing that they observed. A lot of that has to do with not only, as we also mentioned, their capacity to observe and how they're calibrated, their consciousness is generally structured, but what their definitions are, what is important to them, how they view and interpret the world itself. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we talk about things in particular ways because we've learned how to speak about certain things, because we have definitions already given to us or made from our own experience that we lock into. And when you lock in again to definitions, it closes you off to what might actually be there. So I always would encourage folks to look and try not to define, whether that's a definition about a person, whether that's a definition about your own experience, whether that's a definition about who you are, or even what you're eating, good, bad. Can you experience something without defining it? Can you observe something without giving it not only a definition, but can you look at it without having an idea about it? Because, and this is really another part of the heart of this book and this project, is that one of the great difficulties that we have within our consciousness is we always lock ourselves into definitions, and we always lock ourselves into interpretations and conclusions. And those interpretations, definitions, and conclusions are given to us by not only our speech patterns, the way that we talk about and come to those interpretations, definitions, and conclusions, but the ways that we think about them, the concepts and ideas that we have about them. So can you observe something without having an idea about it? Can you just look at it? Can you just observe it without defining it? This is kind of where we're starting to drive this vehicle of consciousness, that if you're able to do that, consciousness, that modality, the way that you are conscious as a human being will begin to change.
Thank you for listening to Educate Everyone with Dr. Joseph Atman and Tammy Trujillo. Join us each week as we explore the inner workings of our own minds and the educational system which builds and supports it. Also, check out our website at middletree.org to see what opportunities Middletree's programs can offer you or your student. And join us on social media. If you have any questions you'd like Dr. Atman to answer, please leave them on a post or send us a message, and you may hear them answered on the next episode of Educate Everyone. Until then, thanks for tuning in.